Have you ever met the connector? Well, he ponders, he helps, he creates, he writes, he speaks. He basically connects people and brings them together. I speak about Paul Solano of PS and All Marketing Group. At psandallmarketinggroup.com, you will receive an assembled group of Paul's contacts and connections that cross into many sectors of life. Please contact Paul Solano at 617-240-4130 or psandallmarketinggroup@gmail.com if you are in the market for a wide array of services. Again, please contact The Connector, Paul Solano at 617-240-4130 or psandallmarketinggroup@gmail.com with any questions. And now, here's Paul Solano, the host of Paul Ponders.
Welcome to #Paul Ponders. I've really enjoyed bringing you fun, informed, intriguing, and pondering podcasts. Many thanks to #PodPro Entertainment. Today's collaborating sponsor, Scott Albertson of #Project142.org, Riverworks Credit Union, NMLS number 410564, and Remax Renaissance Realty of Reading. Thanks for listening, rating, reviewing, and subscribing. Let #Paul Ponders begin. Greetings, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. This is a very special segment for me. I came in touch with our guest speaker, Sara Vladic, a New York Times bestselling author of the book Indianapolis, to our mutual friend, Scott Albertson. So I want to bring Sara Vladic onto the podcast. Sara, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Paul, and thanks, Scott, for introducing us.
Absolutely. Scott is another connector. People have said that I am the connector. Scott is a great connector with his Project 142. He met you, I believe, at the Beneath the Sea. And when he came back from the Beneath the Sea, he said, I met some really, really cool people. I even met a New York Times best-selling author. She wrote this book. She's a naval author. She's a naval historian. She does everything. She's so nice, too. And I said, oh, what's her name? And he said, Sara Vladic. I said, well, I'm going to have to look her up. And then time went on. And then what happened, Sara, was that Scott connected the two of us. And I'm so glad he did, because you are an absolutely wonderful person. I have had the opportunity to purchase and to read, for the most part, most of the book, The Dangerous Shore. So I want you to take it away, and I want you to let our listeners know, what is The Dangerous Shore all about?
Well, The Dangerous Shore is a nonfiction, but it's written. I hated history in school. And so I wanted to, make history interesting. And what really made it interesting was the people. And so to take these true, incredible stories and to write them in a way that people will actually, some of them are stranger than fiction. So the story is really about the everyday Americans who defended our shore when U-boats came and attacked, and I-boats, the Japanese submarines too, during World War II. So you have the mafia, you have naval intelligence, you have retired World War I pilots, one is a double amputee, and they're flying planes, they're doing patrols on the coasts. You have spies, you have double agent spies, and all these individuals, these stories intertwine and come together to April of 1945 at the end of the war. So you really get to see the everyday person on the home front for a change, fighting the good fight and doing what they can to keep the war away from our shore.
That is absolutely fascinating. And I will say that I'm a history major. I went to Boston College, and I majored in history. And I really like the post-World War I history. And I did study a lot about World War II. But I will say that I never really even touched upon how close America was to being attacked. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, prior to this, I did the book Indianapolis, as you mentioned, and so my focus had always been the Pacific War. And so when I started researching this and seeing, we had 660 ships, I think, sunk in our coastal waters. So literally people are laying on the beach, they're sun tanning or doing whatever. There's a one of them, there's a fireman's ball one place, and they're watching ships get blown up by German U-boats right in front of them, so close that the heat can be felt from the explosions. So this is happening all the way from Maine down, into the Gulf and even on the West Coast. And I had no idea. I didn't know. I mean, I kind of knew about the threat of the U-boats, but not to that extent. And so it was wild for me to just go on this ride of learning how close we really were, like you said.
Further into the title, after the title, The Dangerous Shore, how a motley crew of scientists, mobsters, double agents, retirees, volunteer pilots, and a Boy Scout stopped the invasion of America. And after reading through the book, I was absolutely amazed at how the mafia, how the Meyer Lanskys of the world, how the Lucky Lucianos were so helpful to the
Truly,
cause.
they were very patriotic. In fact, there was a couple instances in their testimonies that I used to write the book that they talk about they were more offended by someone saying that they weren't patriots than they were by being called murderers. And so, like,
Wow.
to me, that was this weird dynamic of how do recognize this person in this instance as a good guy who is also a very bad guy, and trying to balance that and show really how important they were. I mean, they were key to keeping New York safe, and that was our major port of entry for supplies and our men being sent out and everything going out to Europe. They went through New York, so it was the mob that kept the port and the waters there safe, and they worked directly with naval intelligence to do that. And so that was another one that I was like, oh my gosh, how do we not know this story? It's crazy.
Right, absolutely, absolutely, and I just wanted to, just talk about the Battle of the Atlantic,
Mhm.
the chapter, I believe, page 470. It's a very, very long book, as you said earlier, before we went on air. This is great for the biceps and the triceps and lifting because the book is really so heavy, but it's really, really great. And, you wrote about Ivar Westerlund. Okay, and it was one of those things that he hailed from Brockton, Mass. And as a quick aside, I have a radio show out of Marshfield on WATD 95.9, and the city of Brockton is in that region. If you want to let us know about Ivar and what happened with his being from Brockton and almost missing the boat, if you will, okay, when he was traveling on leave.
Yeah, the story of Eagle 56, which I believe, quite a few people are familiar with in that area because of the unusual and unfortunate circumstance in that it was sunk in the very, very, very last days of war, and it was sunk by a German torpedo, but it was classified as a boiler explosion all the way up until recently. And they found the ship recently, and Ivar was amongst the crew, and he almost missed the ship that day. And had he missed it, he would have survived, obviously. And so there were only, I believe, 13 survivors of Eagle 56, and they got the Purple Heart. I think there were only 3 still living by the time that this was rectified and they received the Purple Heart. So that's a big part of the story through line from beginning to end is this little tiny sub chaser that, served in from New Jersey all the way down to the Florida Keys, patrolling our coasts and defending our coasts from U-boats. And it was involved in testing um, the mock, or what's it called? The 24, Mark 24, and all these different things. It played this really important part, but it's this little known boat that pretty much no one's ever heard of, and it played such an important role in the war. So Ivar was one of the crew who were lost in the sinking of that by the German submarine that came within a mile of the coast, and people saw it actually be sunk, and then it still was classified as a boiler explosion.
Wow, unbelievable. But then I believe in 2018, 2019, I think there was overruled. It was probably like one of the only times that the U.S. Naval Academy has, in fact, admitted that, okay, we made a mistake. We have to overturn this.
Well, so they in 2019, actually, a good friend of mine and Richie Kohler was involved, and they found the ship. and the boiler was intact. And how it's hard to argue that one. And so, the Naval History and Heritage Command worked closely with them and rectified that. And a lot of that goes into the book. And then what happened as a result of the finding and the exoneration and of the crew. So, um, yeah, it was a very close to home storyline because a lot of those men served. They were right there off the coast, so they lived in Massachusetts. They lived in those areas, and in fact, the survivors were brought back to Quincy, I believe, and when they were recovered.
Wow, that's amazing. So, Sarah, just off the beaten path, if you will, how does one become an author of such great historical occurrences and all? How did you get started?
Oh, I started as a teenager, but I didn't intend to be an author. It started off as a filmmaker and wanting to do this as movies, and actually the Indianapolis story is what got me into this. But the love of research, I think that was what I liked so much, was it was almost like treasure hunting for information and being able to take stories that are 100% true based on 100% real dialogue and archives and pictures and diaries, and then craft a story so that everyone learns about it. And to know how important these stories were, it was really, really hard, and I really enjoyed that it was very hard, but
Wow.
payoff was fantastic. So, yeah, it's been quite a wild ride. I think 25 years ago, I started with Indianapolis, and I'm still very involved with that group and the families, and they're very close, and likewise with the Dangerous Shore. So it's not just a job, it's kind of a life now.
Wow. So, is there a third book in the works?
There's a couple topics. I'm trying to decide which one I'm gonna do. If I'm gonna stick with World War II or if I'm gonna, branch out and try something totally new, but it will be nonfiction, so, it will be another true story.
Wow, wow, that's amazing. Now, is this book, The Dangerous Shore, on audiobook?
It is. It is on audiobook and Kindle. On audiobook, it's read by John Bedford Lloyd, who is fantastic. He's such a great narrator, so, kudos to him for doing such a wonderful job.
That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. So, how do our listeners in Paul Ponder's land purchase your book?
It's at every major bookseller, but you can, Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Books A Million, but the easiest way to find the link is my website, which is saravladic.com. So Vladic, like the pickle, Vlasic with the D.
I love it. That's a great way of remembering that. Now, I have seen that you have a website, Film by Serendipity. Now, tell us about that. What's that with the filmmaking?
So I do work in film and television mostly as a writer producer, and I
Oh,
directed a documentary about USS Indianapolis called USS Indianapolis: The Legacy. And so I interviewed 107 of the survivors of Indianapolis over 10 years and put that together. And it's really their story and they tell it. There's no narrator. So start to finish, the men who lived it and their families of those who didn't come home are the ones telling the story. So, and then I work in, movies mostly, fixing scripts that are terrible. There's a lot of work.
wow, wow, unbelievable, unbelievable. And I believe you've also done some work with National Geographic.
I have. I've worked with them as a historian and a writer and a subject matter expert in various topics on World War II. So, going around and filming a lot of veterans of various wars, not just World War II, but Vietnam, and also Korea and more recent wars, Afghanistan and whatnot. So, had the honor to get to speak directly with our service members, and that has been a privilege, truly.
Wow, that is absolutely remarkable. I thank you for doing that. Just bringing the cases forward of what our veterans did for our country. Absolutely wonderful. So, just to wind down and all, what's the advice you would give someone who is looking to write a book?
Sit down every day, make yourself do it, even if it's garbage, right. Sit, set aside a time, maybe first thing in the morning if you have work, or before work or after, and say, I will not leave this desk until I write 200 words, 500 words. Set a goal for yourself, and half the time you'll throw it away, but it's like working out. The more you do it, the more comfortable it gets, and the more you enjoy it, and you get better and better. So that's all I can say is you don't have to start out and write the great American novel. You just have to write, and anyone can do it.
Wow. Now, do you have a research team in place, or were you just doing your own research?
That's all me and my husband. He gets roped into it quite a bit. So he
Wow.
goes to the
I love it.
archives for me, but and my mother-in-law helps too, but and I have a good friend by the name of Sherry who helps sometimes as well. But really what it is it's a lot of reading. And with the um with Dangerous Shore, one of the storylines, the Grace Buchanan Deneen storyline,
Mm,
is it okay for me to
good.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good.
With Grace Buchanan Deneen, I received files from the FBI for that, and they filmed her 24/7 for a year and a half. And so all of that dialogue is real dialogue. I didn't make that up. And with her, they filmed it. I have the transcripts. There was like 12,000 pages of transcripts and files and all these things that I got from the FBI. So research is a lot of reading. And yeah, the team is me and the friends and family who are willing to help sometimes for a meal.
Right. Right, right, exactly. Absolutely amazing. So, thank you for that solid advice, and I'm so happy that Scott Albertson had put us together, and this has been absolutely wonderful. And one final plug for the book, please.
Dangerous Shore, it is very relevant to the world today. And it's really about what everyone can do in their own neighborhoods with their friends to just make things better. It's not about fixing the world. It's about fixing your community or just, standing up and doing the right thing. And I think we can all take away something from that in the best way possible.
Wow. Well, Sara Vladic, not Vlasic, not like the pickle, but with a D. I want to thank you for being with us and look forward to having you on once again.
Thank you so much, Paul.
You're welcome. Hashtag Indeed. I trust that you have enjoyed Hashtag Paul Ponders. Again, my name is Paul Solano of PS&All Marketing Group, and I may be reached via email at paul@paulponders.com to do some more pondering. Many thanks to my longtime collaborative friend and associate, Alonzo Amos of Pod Pro Entertainment, in bringing you our fun, exciting, informative podcasts. You rock, Techie Alonzo. With PS&All Marketing Group, I created a side gig to connect you and get things done. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me at paul@paulponders.com with any questions. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Paul Ponders. Follow us on Twitter at Paul Ponders Pod. Follow us on Instagram at Paul Ponders Podcast. Thank you again for listening to Hashtag Paul Ponders, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our website, paulponders.com, or wherever you stream your podcasts. Subscribe, stream, rate, and review our shows. Your ratings and reviews help our show reach new audiences. Produced by Pod Pro Entertainment, Hashtag Paul Ponders lives within a network of podcasts located at podproentertainment.com. Hashtag the new radio. Until we meet again, my friend, stay well. Hashtag Indeed.